What's that? You're the opener. Yeah, right.
Good evening, friends.
Good evening.
My name is Jim Davidson. I'm the assistant conductor for Springfield Symphony, and I'm one of the music directors here at First and Calvary. So welcome to Musical Offerings. It's a little buzzy. I'll go mess with that here in a minute. We're really excited for this concert this weekend with the Flore Requiem and a few other things too. But we have our guest soloist for the Requiem here that Kyle will introduce shortly. Shameless commercial on behalf of First and Calvary. Our next Musical Offerings concert is in March on Saturday the 21st, which is out of our normal Sunday afternoon routine. The cellist Stuart Pincombe is giving a recital here in the atrium at 7:30 in the evening on that Saturday night. So you're more than welcome to come check that out. And if you have any questions about the church or what we do and our music, just kind of grab me afterward. I'm happy to talk about it. But without any further ado, please welcome Kyle, who will introduce our soloists for this weekend.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you for hosting us here at First and Calvary. This has been just a great location for our Behind the Baton. Thank you to all of you for coming out this afternoon. And I'd like to bring up and give a nice warm welcome to our two soloists for this program, Tara Stafford Spyres and Jonathan Stinson. So welcome. Tara, you can go ahead and perch on the stools here. And we have one microphone, so we will trade it around, because in addition to those folks who are here with us, I'd also like to say hello and welcome to those who are watching us online, because it's streaming on Facebook, and a lot of people get to watch the replay of this as well. Well, as you all know, because I recognize all of you, you know that this is a chance for our audience for Saturday's performance to get to know a little bit about our soloists, get to know them personally. Jim is our organist for this concert, and so we might persuade you to sing a few notes as well. Not a lot. I didn't tell them beforehand, so this is an unwarned sing. But before I get to Tara and Jonathan, I want to say just a little bit about this concert, because it's a little bit of an unusual program. Every February we do a collaboration with the local university choirs, and that's Missouri State and Evangel and Drury universities. They join us for a big mass choir. We'll have a big group this time. I think it's almost 200 singers that will be on stage with us, which is a good number for a big stage like this. And we will be performing the Fauré Requiem. Gabriel Fauré, a French composer, kind of at the forefront of what we call Impressionism. Not exactly an Impressionist, but was the teacher of Ravel, colleague of Debussy, and so Impressionism does play into his music, although he is definitely what we call a late Romantic French composer. And so the Fauré is the big collaboration between the orchestra and the choirs and our soloists. But on the other half of the program, we're going to do that on the first half of the concert. And on the other half of the program, the main piece is a symphony by Paul Hindemith. It's called the Symphony Matisse der Maler, which translates to Matthew the Painter. And it's a symphony of materials that come from his opera, Matisse der Maler, which is an opera about the German Renaissance painter Matthias Grunewald, who was the painter of the Isenheim altarpiece. And it is a spectacular religious icon, this Isenheim altarpiece. And the symphony is 3 movements that are based on 3 of the panels, an angel concert and the portrayal of the entombment, and also the Temptation of St. Anthony. And so while we perform this piece, I'll be projecting, I've just finished my film, that'll be images of the altarpiece that you'll be able to see while we're playing this piece that was written about the painter of this altarpiece. And so this concert is a concert of religious or religious-inspired music, and really pretty specifically kind of mystical religion. And so I've paired 2 other pieces on this program. We're going to open with a piece by Giovanni Gabrielli, a Renaissance piece for brass instruments that was written to be performed in St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice. And then we are also playing the oldest piece that the Springfield Symphony has ever played to open our second half. It's a piece by Hildegard of Bingen. It was written in the year 1072, so we're nearly 1,000 years old. It was originally a vocal work, but this is a string version of one of her little vocal antiphons, and that's going to start the second half. So, no better way to spend Valentine's Day than contemplating your mortality and religious mysticism, but it will be a beautiful, beautiful program. In honesty, the Magister Mahler Symphony was, in my mind, it was one of the original pieces I had planned for this season. It was an anchor piece for my season. And so when it came time to choose the choral work, I've had requests from the choirs, from the choir directors, from audience members for us to do the Fauré Requiem for quite some time. The last time the Springfield Symphony did it was in 2002, long before I was here, and it was a collaboration with the local choirs. And I've shied away from the Fauré a little bit over the years because it doesn't have the same dramatic punch as, say, the Verdi Requiem or even the Mozart Requiem. It's really more of a contemplative requiem. For those of you who don't know, a requiem, if we say requiem, what we mean is a requiem mass. So it is the composed music to a requiem mass coming from the Catholic tradition. Not all requiems are Catholic. Famously, Brahms wrote a German requiem that was based on the Lutheran Bible. And the requiem is the part of the mass text that is specific to the services that are performed for the dead. And there is a specific text, it's called the Dies Irae, or the Day of Wrath, that is inserted into the regular mass text that makes a mass a requiem mass rather than just a mass. Now that is not to say that every requiem is the same, and in fact, all composers really mess with the way, the order, which parts of the text get put in. And the Fauré Requiem has often been referred to as, instead of the fire and brimstone and fury of the Verdi Requiem, or the, in some ways, intellectual pinnacle of the Mozart Requiem, the Fauré Requiem is often called a lullaby to usher you into the afterlife, into the afterworld. And so it is much more peaceful, much calmer, much more placid and beautiful. There's a little bit of drama that peaks up here and there. And we'll talk about the Fauré a little bit because I know both of our singers have done this quite a bit. But let's start just with some introductions. Tara, I'm so happy you're with us. Tara hardly needs an introduction here in Springfield, but some of you don't go to the opera regularly, so I will just say Tara Stafford Spyres has sung for many, many years with the Ozarks Lyric Opera and throughout the world with opera companies and in concert performances. She sung with the Springfield Symphony during the big Spyres family concert. I think that's the only time that we've worked together so far, except we did it in Topeka also. But we will be working together in about a month and a half on Sound of Music with Alice is directing that. So Tara, welcome. Tara, tell us, just give us a thumbnail of your biography, of just your background.
Well, yes, long story short. So I am from Rogersville, Missouri. I grew up singing, I sang musicals, and I was in choir in Rogersville, and so when I went to college, I decided to have a degree in performance, so I went to Drury University, and I studied there with Rosemary Jackson, and after Drury, I went to UNC Greensboro to start my master's, and I took a break there, and I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and I worked with the Asheville Lyric Opera there for 2 years, and after that, I finished my master's at Peabody University in Baltimore, or Peabody Conservatory, sorry, in Baltimore, Maryland.
Where we just missed each other.
Yeah.
I just
so
left.
Strange.
Yeah.
Right. And and so after that, I worked with the Springfield Regional Opera a little bit, and I moved. Where did I live? Well, I've moved around and sung different places, and then in 2010 I married Michael Spyres. living in Belgium, and that's where I started working with his agent. And so I have for the past, so Valentine's is our technical anniversary. So it was 17 years ago, I guess, we decided to be a couple. And so for 17 years, I've lived with that crazy guy, and I sing around in different places all over Europe. The first time we sang together was in Moscow, and that was interesting. We sang at the Tchaikovsky Theater in Moscow. And after our concert, there were two guys that came to the concert from Moscow, and they came to our backstage door and they said, "Yeah, USA, go USA!" And so they took us out for a night on the town in Moscow, and that was like one of the first experiences with Michael, singing with him, and it was wild. So since then I've sung in France and Italy and England and let's see. Well, the last time I sang the Fauré Requiem, the Pie Jesu, I was in Aix-en-Provence. I sang with the symphony there in 2023. But that was just this aria. It was part of a program I did. And so I haven't actually performed this piece since 2000, maybe, with Drury. I sang the solo part at Drury University. And I got to sing the whole choir part too, which I love so much. So you guys are in for a treat. It's going to be a wonderful performance, I'm sure.
Great.
Was that?
That was perfect. And while you're here on Valentine's night singing the Pie Jesu, Michael's in New York rehearsing for Tristan.
He was hoping he wouldn't have rehearsal. He was going to come here.
He was going to fly out from.
He's got rehearsal.
He'll be rehearsing. He's doing this. Tristan is older for the first time, so which is exciting. Yeah. Jonathan, I met a few years back when we did Don Giovanni, and you were Leporello in Don Giovanni, and so do the same thing if you would. Just give us the thumbnail biography.
Good, right. Thank you for having me. Good to be here. I started. So let me start all the way back and say that when I was about 5 years old. This actually kind of ties in a little bit to the story of Michael being in New York. Great performances on PBS had the entire ring cycle on one night at a time. 4 operas, about 8 to midnight, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or whenever it was. And apparently, I was so mesmerized by it that I just watched every single opera the entire time. And my parents let me stay up to 12, mostly out of just confusion as to why I was so enamored with this. And so when I ended up I went to Oberlin Conservatory for my undergrad voice performance, and when I went there, I started as music education because I just had an incredible experience with my choral program in my high school. I also was first chair trombone in the marching band and concertmaster of the orchestra for 3 years playing violin. I was also composing since age 14, and so I was doing kind of every possible thing I could think of when it came to music. That music education just seemed like the most obvious fit because I could just kind of teach K through 12, especially at the high school level, just kind of on a variety of different levels. But then my best friend in my freshman year was a voice performance major, and he is now singing all over Germany, and so he just kind of got me hooked on opera. And within 3 semesters, I wanted to switch to be an opera singer, and I left music education behind just to sing. It was no surprise to my parents, ultimately, that I found opera because I found it, when I was in kindergarten. I went from there to Indiana University for my master's, and then spent about 6 years kind of jumping around the country, singing kind of where I could. I actually landed for a little while in Kansas City, doing their resident artist program. My big claim to fame there was my very first Chouinard at Lyric Opera Kansas City was also Michael Fabiano's first Rodolfo, who now sings all over the world. He came to Kansas City to try out a Rodolfo, because I think he had a contract singing at La Scala the following year or something like that. And so he thought Kansas City would be a safe place, and it was really fun to just kind of get to know him at the beginning of his career. This is about 2 years after he won the Metropolitan Opera competition. From there, I decided, I met my wife singing The Count and Susanna in The Marriage of Figaro, which is, if you know the opera, the Count spends the entire opera trying to cheat on his wife with Susanna, So everyone in the cast thought it was the absolute, and of course she doesn't want this. So the cast thought it was one of the funniest things in the world that she would spend the entire rehearsal process absolutely hating me and detesting me, and then we'd go for a date. And only about 14 months later we were engaged. It was right around that time that I decided, I think I want to go a little bit the academic route. My parents were both college professors. My sister is currently a college professor. And so I went back to my doctorate at Cincinnati, and we call it CCM, the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, or Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music is technically what the CCM stands for. That was about 15 years ago, and I started kind of bouncing around a couple universities. I taught for a year in Liverpool, England at a university there, and then ultimately ended up at the University of Arkansas, which is where I am now. And I'm currently a voice professor, and I'm it wasn't on my bucket list to move to Arkansas. I'm from Philadelphia, and my wife is from Boston. But we absolutely love it, and we're staying probably for our whole entire careers. But anyway, I'm the kind of chair of all things voice. I'm the vocal area coordinator there, and I'm also their opera director. I guess upcoming, I'll just say that if you went to La Boheme, I was the Marcello. So I was here only a few months ago. And this summer I'll be singing Dulcimara and The Elixir of Love, Donizetti comedy in Le Mans, France. So I will be traveling to Europe to sing in Dulcimara this July.
Thank you. That's great. Both of you mentioned opera a lot because you both have sung opera a lot, and so I'm gonna pivot here for a moment, because what we're doing with this with the foray is definitely not opera, and it's not even a particularly operatic oratorio. Unlike again Verdi. I mean, we've compared this again to the Verdi Requiem. Some people say the Verdi Requiem is his best opera. It just happens to be confined to the stage and it's not acted out. But all of the drama of his operas are there in his Requiem. This piece is of really, I mean, it comes more out of church music than stage, I would say. In fact, part of the reason I have not done this piece very much is because my choral professor used to say it really functions a little better as service music than concert music. I'm not sure he's right about that. I think it's very much a concert piece, particularly in this version. And I'll pause for a moment and say there was an original version that Fauré wrote that was for very small ensembles, just organ, violas and cellos, and then a solo obbligato violin. But then the World's Fair came to Paris in 1900, and he was asked to expand it, and so he rewrote the orchestra and the accompaniment for much bigger forces. And in fact, it premiered at the Trocadero, which has now been taken down, but the Trocadero Palace in the World's Fair in 1900, and he asked for as many orchestral forces as he could get in a big giant choir. He also switched from using boy treble singers, meaning boy sopranos and boy altos, which was really required by the Catholic Church. They did not want women to be singing the solo parts. That when he made the larger version, he opened it up for women, and particularly much larger voices, to be singing the Pie Jesu and also the choral parts. So both of you are opera singers, but can you talk a little bit about how you approach a singing part, a singing role that is very much non-operatic? How does that change the way you think about your performance and the way you prepare for it and the way you present it? Tara or Jonathan?
Yeah. When I approach everything, I'm kind of a little bit, I think, different, just because, as I mentioned, with all of my musical interests as a child and my composition as well, I've written 2 one-act operas of my own. I always want to funnel everything that I do kind of through the lens of what is the entire ensemble, what is the entire kind of, let's just call it, for sake of opera, production. Fauré is just, one of his kind of big calling cards. He was probably most famous. I don't know if this is true in his lifetime, but his art songs are kind of the first, songs that young singers get to sing in French. Kind of the introduction to singing the French language is often through the lens of Fauré. And then we move from there to Debussy and Ravel and Gounod and eventually Poulenc and all of them. And then, of course, there's a lot of chamber music that he wrote. So he was often thinking in the more intimate level. So it's not actually a surprise as Requiem is also intimate. And so in that like lens, it wouldn't really occur to me to sing the Fauré just as purely kind of operatic big bravado, because with the exception of maybe one or two of his art songs, things which is just almost like it's just a wall of sound. With the exception of that, maybe it's just everything is always in this kind of intimate, personal thing. Like you always get the sense that Fauré wasn't writing with the intention of any audience at any level of being more than about 50 people. And so yes, we'll have 200 people on stage, we'll have this big auditorium, but this Requiem would be just at home, just performing it in the living room. And it wouldn't feel out of place. You can't really do that with any other Requiem.
Do you have to do something different with your voice?
Vocally, I think it just means to really to match the color. So the orchestration is a chamber orchestration, and when you hear kind of certain timbres you're interacting with, again, as a composer and as an orchestrator, you're always thinking chamber. That was kind of the big thing that Mahler really introduced a lot with orchestrations is, yes, I'm writing for 70 people up there, but really I'm writing chamber work among different sections and having fun pairing smaller sections of the orchestra. And when you think of yourself as a singer, not as being accompanied, but being part of that timbre, then you realize that there are certain timbres, singing Marcello or singing, Leporello or anything like that, is just out of place in this texture and in this timbre. And therefore, we're really looking kind of for, I don't want to say restrained, because that kind of brings up negatives of kind of hiding your voice, pulling it back. It's more just finding, I guess color is just the best word, of just trying to find something that really, that captures the same, as a baritone, the same vocal timbre of a cello or a viola, not of the trombone.
And I'll say
the cellos and the violas are the main body of the strings. The violins do play, but this is an unusual piece. And when you come and see this, you're going to see us in an unusual setup, because I have arranged the violas are going to be over on my left side where the violins usually are. So rather than seeing your concertmaster come in and leading the violin section, we're going to have the viola section over on that side, which I've never done. Ever in my entire career, this would be the first time having the violas over there. The violins are going to sit in the center because they're a little bit less important in this one, and then the cellos are on the outside on the other side. And both the cello and the viola sections divide into two, so it's almost like having two viola sections, two cello sections. And so, yes, you're right, that the baritone voice kind of fits right into the timbre. And then, of the wind instruments that are used, it's frequently the horns, the French horns, and the bassoons, and sometimes the clarinets, which again are in that middle warm register. Tara, you have a little bit of a different situation in this, because Jonathan's two pieces are with choir. Leading the choir and then going in. But you have a standalone aria, this Pie Jesu. So how do you approach it, and how do you treat it?
Let's see. Well, so in my life, I have sung many, many, many types of music. I've sung at church, I've sung in choirs, I performed musicals, I sing in a rock band, I sing opera. So this is more of and it's always my same voice, but I think about what type of character or color that I want to use and what's appropriate for the piece and what would not, just what fits the piece and what the composer's trying to do. So with this aria, it's so beautiful, and I think this is more of the lullaby part of the Requiem. It's so simple and so beautiful, and so I try to keep it as pure and clear as I can sing. So it's definitely not my bigger operatic. There's maybe a couple that I, crescendo into a little bit more operatic voice. But other than that, I just feel like it's like a lullaby kind of.
And it's a really simple text.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
3 lines and that's it, and then repeat it. Can we have you sing just a little bit of it? Jim, you want to come up? So we don't
want to give the whole thing away. So we're not going to ask either of them to sing whole sections, but at least to maybe the first phrase of the Pie Jesu, just so, because I think you, even if you don't know that you know the Foray Requiem, you will probably recognize this particular movement. So on no rehearsal, with no warning, we'll let Jim and Tara just sort of jump in, at least for a phrase.
We can do this.
Yeah. Great, beautiful, gorgeous. Oh gosh, it sounds so good. And the Pie Jesu comes at the halfway point in the Requiem. It's a 7-movement Requiem, and the 4th movement is the Pie Jesu. So we've had the choir, we've had the baritone, and then we kind of stop. It's the only time the choir sits down. You come out, or you'll be out, and you stand and sing this gorgeous piece. And this is one of the pieces that became one of Foray's big hits. So you've probably heard it. I mean, it almost seems like almost every PBS extravaganza that uses singers, at some point someone will sing the Pie Jesu on there. Beautiful, beautiful. Jonathan, you want to sing just a little bit of the Libera Me, maybe, just because that's a little bit of a more dramatic spot?
If we ever get to the end of this, you'll hear it on Saturday.
Yeah.
There is one moment where it does turn into opera. He writes, forte sempre, forte always.
Fantastic. Great. Snippets. It's interesting to me. We only have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that people. Thank you, Jim. By the way, thank you for sitting in on that. I want to ask a little with the Pie Jesu. It has been sung by almost every type of soprano there is. I mean, for one thing, from boy sopranos, which with the original version, but I mean, Ellie Ameling and Barbara Bonney and the very, very light sopranos to, I think Jesse Norman did it maybe as a mezzo. Everybody's done it. So how do you decide what color you're going to use for your voice, or do you decide this is just your voice?
Maybe this is just my voice. No, I sang in choir quite a bit when I was younger, and I enjoyed feeling like part of the ensemble. And so a lot of times when I sing like operatic things, it's a role, it's a character, but this is just part of the ensemble. And so I try to keep it as, clear and pure and maybe not like holding it in, but yeah, just, and I think that's, I've tried to sing with my most natural voice as I can.
Not
without any kind of
not
affectations, no character, just
that's beautiful. I love the way your voice sounds on it. I think it's perfect.
Jonathan, it's kind of funny that you talked about that ring cycle. That was James Morris
Was it? Okay.
singing Baton and on that Met ring cycle, that very famous broadcast. You sound a lot like James Morris to me. I mean, I hear a lot of that quality. And so, same question goes to you. How do you decide? We talked about coloring the way the orchestra colors, but how do you decide what kind of shade or color you're going to put on it?
Let me just start by, that's an incredible compliment. But I actually, let's just call it like kind of a quarter-life crisis career-wise in the last few years, because I've always been told that I was kind of a lighter lyric baritone. In the last 5 years, I started singing slightly heavier things, and it didn't feel wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there are like, in fact, I had sung several mazzettos and giovannis before that. That was my first Leporello. You know, I have since sung Olin Blitch in Susanna, which is a bass baritone role. I did my first Figaro in Marriage of Figaro after several counts. So it's not that I'm moving lower, it's just that I'm moving kind of in that slightly weightier you know, range. So, you're not the first one to point out that that's a little bit different, at least where I have been for the last 20 years. As far as just kind of colors and when to choose, the liberame is the kind of the fire, right? This is
Save me.
Yeah, save me, and you know, you're making, you know, I'm made to tremble,
Yeah.
and talking about, you know, Judgment Day and fire, you know, and so this is kind of more of that operatic one. The other thing that I sing is a prayer about, you know, the ostias. It's a prayer about delivering from death to the eternal life through peace.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things I love about this piece is that the baritone gets to do both.
Yeah.
Because I think that really kind of is an interesting unifying thing about the baritone voice has this color of peace, and then 4 movements later you're delivering the wrath.
Right.
You know, and so I'm choosing this one. You know, I just spent 10 minutes talking about how this foray is not necessarily operatic and it's intimate, but that liberame, it does get to the point that it is a pretty big thing at the end of that verse, where the ostias really never grows beyond about a mezzo piano. You know, and so the color really does have to always come back to the text. You know, if I'm talking about hell and damnation and fire, I'm going to give a little bit of an edge. You know, pedagogically, that just means that I'm really giving a lot of boost to those upper harmonics to give a cut to it. You know, as opposed to that kind of more velvety quality of the lower harmonics.
And I just finished this super titles this afternoon, so you will have super titles during the performance, so you will be able to follow along the text. When you're watching the text, you'll see actually a kind of a surprisingly few titles, again, compared to a Mozart Requiem or Verdi Requiem, where the text is constantly changing. He just chooses particular places and then repeats them, and it's a little bit less text heavy, I think. I love hearing your insights. Thank you so much. Let's ask. Does anyone have any questions for either of our soloists or for me?
Yeah, as an amateur chorister who's never sung the Fauré Requiem, I've never sung any choral work from Fauré. I wonder if anyone can speak to how Fauré writes for chorus. And is it fun to sing in the chorus, and is it challenging? And
I'll just start off by saying I think he writes really well for the voice, and it's not especially demanding. I mean, technically.
I don't think so. The last time I sang this in a choir was 1,000 years ago. But I do remember it being just so, is this one? So fulfilling. It's just a beautiful piece. Yeah, I don't think it's super.
Sure, no problem. As we talked about with Fauré, you know, being a vocal composer, one of the reasons that we assign all of the Fauré songs to younger students is because his original key was usually in the medium key, meaning it wasn't that high or that low for anyone, and so it's great for a young tenor that doesn't quite have his upper range figured out. We have to remember that Fauré was also the dean, like the head of the Paris Conservatoire for many years, so you realize that most of his career was spent in academia, you know, teaching students, and so you wonder, you know, it's a little bit different than maybe Verdi having, you know, the top tenor in Italy to write for, and then all of a sudden, you get a bunch of high A's and B flats.
Right.
You know, Fauré wasn't writing for those voices. He was writing for a lot of people that are a little more in the community or younger singers. So I really kind of see him as writing for younger singers that are still kind of, figuring out their own voices. And for that reason, I think it's just incredible to sing with amateur choirs and to sing with undergraduate singers.
And for that matter, if you compare it or contrast it to Beethoven, if you think of the Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy, or even more so as Missa Solemnis, Beethoven wrote without regard for the singer. So he just wrote a part and good luck, figure it out kind of thing. Whereas this, as Jonathan mentioned, the parts, so I haven't sung publicly for a long time, but I studied voice all through as well, and I'm definitely a lighter baritone, but I can sing both the tenor and the baritone or the bass part easily on this. So either one. So it's written in a range that is very doable, and I would guess the altos and sopranos are too, because he had used boy treble for that. So not as difficult, but very gracious is kind of how I'd characterize it. Very it feels good. It feels good to sing. Other questions? Nobody? Anything else interesting? Hildegard from 1070. I am so glad that you came out today. Thank you both, Tara and Jonathan. Thank you for singing for us a little bit. Thank you, Jim, for jumping in to accompany. Thanks, everybody, for watching online. And this is going to be a really, really beautiful performance this weekend. It's been one I've been looking forward to all year long. And I hope you all enjoy as much as we've enjoyed putting it together. So we'll see you on Saturday at the Symphony. Thanks, everybody. Thank you both.